And for those of you who are taking this for credit, how about a little pop quiz? What's the definition of democracy? Anybody? One man, one vote is that's a portion of it. Thank you very much. Rule of the people. I'd say that goes a little deeper. And if we go from the Greek where the word comes from, demos means people or the people. Kratia means power. Literally, the people rule. Rule of the people. That's what democracy means. Now let me ask you something. How many people in this room believe that you are living in a functioning democracy where the people really rule? Raise your hands. Don't be shy. Right? Nobody really believes that. And by the way, it doesn't matter what your political ideology is. Like principled conservatives, liberals, radicals, moderates. Nobody really honestly argues anymore that we live in a functioning democracy in the United States of America. Now, let that sink in for a moment. That is a very big deal. So, what I'm going to do now is my very best effort to, in a very short period of time, give a framework for the United States constitutional framework. How it is that our country is supposed to operate. Because the U.S. Constitution, of course, is the supreme law of the land. That's what we're taught in civics class, or at least I was fortunate enough to still be taught civics. I look out and I'm not even sure anymore today, how much civics is actually taught in public education. But the Supreme Court is, or the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. In that document, there are basically two entities described. We the people and government. It's important to note that the word corporation never appears in the U.S. Constitution. The people or person appears 34 times. Might suggest to us that the founders, for all their faults, and they definitely had many, but for all their faults, they never expected the corporation to play any meaningful role in the body politic. After all, if they expected the corporation to be actively engaged in government, they would have actually described and mentioned the corporation in the document that creates the government, right? We, the people in that document, are described as being free and sovereign. Government is described as being subordinate and accountable. Subordinate to whom? The people. Accountable to whom? I like that. It's got a ring to it. We, the people, are described as having our individual rights. Government is described as having collective duties. In fact, under this constitutional framework, at least as it's supposed to work, all legitimate power is held by the people. The people then delegate a certain amount of that power, and only enough to do the duties that they have been assigned to perform. In fact, under Western concepts of law, the interchange between rights and duties is the very foundation of the law. And to be clear, if I have a right to do something, it means I can do it even if all the rest of you don't like it. I don't need the permission of other people or of government to do it if I have a right to do something. Likewise, if I have a duty to you, sir, it means that I have to do it, even if I don't want to do it. And if I don't do it, you can compel me to do it. And if you need to, you can actually get the rest of social institutions like the police or the courts to intervene and compel me to act. That's the difference between a right and a duty. That is a very important distinction. We, the people, when we're operating as free and sovereign people with our individual rights, this is where we're in our private sphere. When we are operating in the public sphere is government, where we have all of us actually have to figure out interacting together. And I look at this and I think, this is brilliant. I love this. We should try that in this country. I think it would work. And I'm totally serious about that on two levels. One, it is brilliant. And I'll tell you what I really love about it is, number one, it satisfies my civil libertarian impulses, my don't tread on me kind of idea, that when I'm acting as a free and sovereign citizen, I don't need the rest of anybody's permission to act. I have the right to think what I want to think, to say what I want to think. I have certain rights that all the rest of you, even acting governmentally, cannot interfere with. But it doesn't stop there, because this concept understands that no person is an island, that in fact we do operate in a public setting. So my communitarian sensibilities are also satisfied by this document, because it realizes when acting within the public entity that that governmental structures are in place for us to actually collectively make decisions and implement them. Man, I like this very, very much. But before I go one step further in waxing poetic about the U.S. Constitution and how great it is, here's another pop quiz for you. What date was the Constitution either proposed, written, or ratified? I'll take any date. A year. 1787 and 1789. So, I know you're so close, but that's when they were meeting, actually. So you get full credit. You get full credit. That's when they were meeting in Philadelphia. So, in 1786, 1787, 1789, who were the people that got to claim this brilliant, beautiful document? White and men. Rich property owners. There's another thing people often forget. You had to be in the right religion. Right? You could be a rich white man with property, and you still had to be in the right religion before you could even exercise that. And so if we count, and that doesn't even mention children, right? But of the adult population in the area known as the 13 colonies, does anybody know in 1787 what percentage of the adult population actually could claim to be legally persons under law under this framework? 20 is high. It's very high.
10, 5.
7 to 8%. Think about it. 7 to 8% of the adults could claim this framework that we're taught is the framework for the United States. And, of course, no less a noted figure than the late, great Howard Zinn observed, in one respect, the entire history of the United States can be looked at as a series of pitched struggles by human beings to define themselves legally as persons under the Constitution. And so, in a very real way, the founding of the United States government under this constitutional framework is a founding violence. It's a founding violence, obviously, against the indigenous people who lived here first. And by the way, it wasn't discovered, right? There were people living here. They were not lost. So it's a founding violence against the indigenous who were subjected to genocidal policies. It's obviously a founding violence against the Africans who were brought in chains as slaves and forced to build most of the infrastructure of this country. It's a founding violence against the women who could not only could they not vote, they couldn't own property or enter into contracts. In fact, they literally, legally were chattel property themselves. Their legal existence only existed to the extent that they had relationship with their fathers or their husbands or their brothers or their uncles or some man in their life, right? I mean, so I don't want to get all wrapped up in how great the constitutional framework is without really acknowledging the history of where that document comes out of. But I also want to understand and point out that the creation myth that we're taught about this, we're taught for a reason. Because if you take it out of the historical context and just look at the principles and the values and the concepts that are here, it's beautiful. That's why they teach us this creation myth, so that we'll be proud of being Americans, right? And so what I'm saying is, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say where we're from. There's a baby here, and it's beautiful. And these concepts of civil libertarianism and communitarian actions, and that's a beautiful thing, and we need to hold on to that. And before I go to the next one, I really want to underscore the difference between private and public and why individual rights are so important. Because it means that individual rights are so sacrosanct. And by the way, the Constitution doesn't create rights, it recognizes rights. Inherent, inalienable human rights. Which is to say that rights that are inherent to the extent that even if governmental action attempts to interfere